Hey folks, so I'm here in Knapdale Forest by the side of one of the forest lochans, and I'm here to film the beaver. Now Knapdale Forest is about 35 miles south of Oban here in Scotland, and Knapdale Forest is the original site where the beaver were released in 2009 into the wild, so not into sort of enclosed pens like in other sites, but no, these have just been let go. So it's wonderful that they're here. Now, there were several families released in the original batch in 2009, and since then there's been several added too. So there's around about 40 animals in this population, it's believed at the moment. Now, beaver are territorial, something I wasn't aware of, but been told they are. And there's one family on this lochan, there's another lochan that's got some on, and there's several around the area. I'm not going to mention which one I'm actually on. Now, there is the Beaver Centre that you can visit, and the staff there are extremely knowledgeable and helpful. And if you sort of mention that you're a wildlife photographer or a videographer, then they'll discuss various options and point you in the way of other places, various places that are perhaps best to go for photography, because obviously there's those who simply just want to watch the beaver, and then there's those like myself that prefer to get a little bit closer, and so I'll leave it to them to sort of instruct you at the time of where the best place to go is, because that could also change over time as the beaver are actually dispersing to different areas and setting up lodges and so on. This is my third night in the area. The first night I used as a sort of a recce time, where I just walked around various lochs and visited the centre to gain some information. And then last night I was sat here and managed to film one beaver, and it came out from the lodge around about 8:30, and it got too dark to film around about 9:30, so a very short window really. It's a case of if you don't find it, then that's it, you've pretty much looked out, unless you've got night vision gear, of course. Now the reason I'm sat just here is because the lodge is actually on the other side of the loch from where I am, and one thing with pretty much all the locations around here, you do need a long lens. Now I've got the 600mm, and I was thinking of putting the 2x converter on, but the problem with that is that reduces the light, and as the light fades then you come into those sorts of issues, so I've just left it as it is, just the 600mm. Now the other thing that is very, very handy to bring, I'm now here in the middle of August, and so we do have the problem with midge. And yesterday, even though I had the midge net, they were still managing to attack me. So I've brought me other one, which this midge net is a genius idea. It actually has a pair of glasses in, so you can see through it properly. It's better than the one that I had yesterday. Something that's also useful is a pair of binoculars, of course. Now, I have filmed beaver before on the east coast of Scotland, so on the River Tay, and then also a private estate over in that area. And the two locations are quite different. The River Tay is very good for getting close-up shots of them, really, because the actual river is pretty much a uniform width along most of the length that I was walking along looking for the beaver. And so 600mm gave you a fantastic view of the other bank of the river. And once you found a beaver, then it was very easy, because of the paths at the side of the river, just to be able to follow it and track it as it moved. And they didn't seem to be that bothered with people. And there's also sort of kayakers and things like that that go up the river as well, and so they're quite used to disturbance in that way. whereas these here are a little bit, I think probably shyer, because there's certainly not as many people coming here as what visit the side of the Tay. Now here is more typical of perhaps the landscape that we would normally associate with a beaver. Now the thing that surprised me, because this is my first time in this area, was how little the evidence of beaver actually is. Now on the Tay and on the private estate, the amount of trees that they've fetched down and other signs were quite extensive. But here, I mean, we've got the chewed stump, so a tree has been felled at some point just there, but there's not actually that many. And I think the reason for that is because there's so much that they can have a go at. And so their effect on this landscape is spread out a lot more. And also the lodge, I think was a few years after 2009, but has basically been used ever since. And you know, it's been covered over with vegetation and everything, so it doesn't look like a typical pile of sticks that a normal lodge, you know, that I've seen in other places looks like. Now there are several lochans, as I mentioned earlier, that have beaver lodges and families on them. And one of the reasons that I chose to come to this one is because we're surrounded by very mature plantation trees. That sort of acts as a windbreak. It's quite windy at the moment, but the water's actually calm just at this point, so a good chance of seeing the beaver, because they only sort of appear above the water a few centimetres. So it can make it, if it's choppy, it can make it very difficult to see them while swimming. Now yesterday it was mirror calm, it was flat calm, so I got fantastic views of it. And I say it was quite strange in that it just came out and then floated there for quite some time. Now usually when the beaver is moving around the area, it tends to prefer to stick to the shore. That can make it very difficult to track, because here the shoreline is so dense. There's no path that's literally on the shore. It's there is a path passing, but not on the other side. That makes, you know, staying quiet and being able to get through the landscape easily with all this gear very difficult. Now some of the other lochs, like closer to the actual beaver centre, they have really good paths around them, and so it's a totally different environment. It's very easy to walk around, but I've not actually sat by the sides of those because I wanted a place that was both sheltered and had less disturbance from people walking the dogs and so on. Now in this sort of situation, as I mentioned in my other film about dolphin, a polarizer would be very useful. And the reason I haven't fitted the polarizer here is because of that light loss. A polarizer would normally lose around about 2 stops, and of course as the light degrades, then that would mean, you know, a poorer image. And so it's that toss-up between the effect of the polarizer and light and quality with the noise. Now, even though I'm all dressed in camo, it's not totally necessary, but it's always useful to wear muted colours. The beaver have excellent hearing and an excellent sense of smell, but their eyesight is extremely poor, and so that's not what they're really using to look out for danger. It's their sense of smell really that's the most prominent. So when I was here yesterday, I noticed on the far bank a tree that had about a foot of its bark stripped off, and at the side of that is a trail cam. So the beaver centre, they're putting out cameras and they're monitoring the beaver and doing scientific studies all the time. And as I say, they're a very good source of information about this population and others. And it's fantastic that we've now got beaver officially recognised as a native species back in the UK. Now sound recording here would be certainly possible in close quarters, because there are places, as I mentioned earlier, where you can sort of see that a beaver has started to work on a tree. Now, one of the things about this particular lock is they haven't needed to dam it. I think the actual water level pretty much maintains itself at a certain height throughout the year. And so that's really the only reason that they're felling the big trees. There's lots of vegetation, both in the water and on the side, that they can eat. And so it's not as though they're going round the lock just felling every tree that they can see. It's as I say, there's not a lot of evidence that they're here. Now, as you can see, it's very bright straight into the face here. But I noticed yesterday that the sun will have dropped behind behind the tree line that's across the other side of the lock there, and so I won't have that same reflection off the water as what I have now. Now, the best time really to come and try and film beaver, whether it be here or on the Tay or anywhere else in particular, really is to do it in sort of June, July, around the solstice, purely based on the fact that the beaver come out roughly the same time throughout the entire year. And so if that's 8 o'clock, round about the solstice here in Scotland, you can have light levels up to about 11 o'clock that you can use to, that's good enough to film in. At the moment, I'm here in mid-July, mid-August. And so those light levels, it's now getting dark around about 9:30, 9:45. I'll say 9:30. That was enough. The camera it wasn't really useful after that. Now, beaver, as I say, they come out all year. They don't hibernate. So if you have got night vision equipment, then filming in the winter is certainly something that you can do. But unfortunately, I haven't yet. Now, beaver, like many other animals, are habitual, and you will find tracks that go through the vegetation that obviously they're using on a regular basis. And so that, if I was here over a longer period of time, then that's certainly what I would sort of concentrate on to get those extra behavioural shots, because just getting shots of them coming out of the lodge and swimming off down the lock, I've already got that now, but it would be nice then to get different behavioural shots. So as I said, on the River Tay, it was quite easy to do that, because once you'd located a beaver, it was then fairly easy to follow it either up or downstream, and quite often it would cross the river and come literally within meters of you, and you would climb out of the bank to go and pick up different vegetation, because I gather here there's some 50 different types of foods that they'll eat. Now, they are vegetarian strictly, so that's different behavioural shots that I'd like to get. Now, the other thing that I didn't manage to film, but I did manage to sound record last time, and that was 2 kits. I managed to stalk within 4 meters of a kit eating, and after a while I was sat there, sound recording, and it was joined by a second. And when beavers meet, they mutually groom each other and also will vocalize to each other. and I was able to see and record some of that vocalization. That's certainly something I'd like to do again. At the time, I found it extremely emotional because it struck me that that was the first time in 400 years that I could have possibly have done that I was able, before that I would have had to have trekked into Europe or North America or somewhere like that, to be able to get close to beaver. But we've now got them here, which, as I say, I found that quite emotional at the time. So what I'm looking for at the moment, it's now 7:30, so I'm getting close to that time where I expect to start seeing some movement. Now, a beaver's lodge is built so the entrance to it is actually submerged, and so what I'm expecting to see, and what I got yesterday, was a beaver suddenly appearing on the surface of the water, just popping up. I'm not expecting to see an animal come down the banking and then slip into the water. Now, it might do that afterwards. It might sort of come out of the lodge, have a swim around, and then go onto land. A little bit of grooming and a bit of pick something up to eat. But the first thing is suddenly seeing a beaver on the water. A beaver can hold its breath for about 15 minutes if it wants to, and can swim very well below the surface. So if it feels threatened in any way when it comes out of the lodge, it can do quite a distance below the surface before it pops back up again. So from this point on, I'll keep my movements and noise down to a minimum. I ordinarily would like to have the camera lower than to the water than what I have at the moment, and the reason that I've got it as high as what I have is because I'm shooting over these reeds that are right in front of me. Now, an older beaver is heavier, bigger than a kit, and so quite often all you'll see of an older beaver is just a couple of centimetres of the top of its head, whereas a younger beaver is a lot more buoyant, and that's possibly what I was seeing yesterday. And so what you'll see then is a lot more of its back. Here we have one. There it is. So it's doing the same as it did yesterday. It came out of the lodge and is simply floating, smelling the air and hardly moving in the water. And it's facing into the wind. So it's hardly moving at all. It's quite possible that this is this year's kit, because there's quite a lot of its back is visible. Fantastic. Well, thank you for watching. Please feel free to like and subscribe, and all the best to you, and bye for now.